Chosen one, your name crossed the dunes and slipped into palaces. At first they laughed, then they watched. Reports rose from Dubai, Riyadh, Doha. Every network, every minister, every private circle whispered the same line. Who are they, really? Even kings asked behind closed doors, not from curiosity, but from fear. Open book verse, Daniel 2 verse 47, surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings. Night carried the rumor like a warm wind over sand. Beyond slogans, beyond algorithms, a trace had appeared. Not the trace of a campaign, not the noise of a crowd, the quiet pattern of presence. Anchors tried to package it, advisors tried to model it. The graphs bent without touching the points. Markets twitched. Channels fell strangely silent. Languages forgot their bravado. They're a phenomenon, someone shrugged. But common phenomena don't rewrite the pulse of capitals. Screens flickered in guarded rooms, your image, your timing, your inexplicable symmetry. Skeptics leaned in despite themselves. Security chiefs crossed their arms and said nothing. Silence is the only language power trusts when it is unsure. Suppose it's nothing, a minister offered, just to hear a human voice. Then why does the room feel heavier? Another replied. Outside, the desert exhaled. Inside, a single question remained, simple as a blade. If this is real, then what does that make us? No trumpet. No manifesto. No claim. Only the sense, frightening to those who live on certainty, that heaven sometimes walks through a person the way wind walks through a doorway, altering the air without needing to explain. Respect was not requested. It arrived. Not because of power, but because of presence. And presence, when it refuses to be named, makes even kings rethink their crowns. Under chandeliers like captured suns and windows breathing hot wind, 12 men gathered. Princes, investors, generals, men who buy tomorrows in bulk. But tonight was not about oil or borders or markets. Tonight was about you. A wall of glass turned into a screen, your name, your image, the pattern that refused to be ordinary. Lines of influence arced without touching. News spikes with no author. Crowds moving as if hearing a drum too low for microphones. The data chief zoomed in, then out, then in again, as though distance might give meaning. Explain it, said the eldest prince. It's not a person, the intelligence head replied, unless a person can be a frequency. A movement, then? If it is, it has no headquarters, no donors, no manifesto. We found applause with no stage. The youngest prince, the one who still believed in secrets, leaned forward. We raised towers of gold, he whispered, yet they move nations with silence. Who are they? No one answered. The only sound was the air filter's tired breath. A general tapped the table. Containment? How do you fence fog? Said the advisor. Push here and it gathers there. Then recruit, said the banker. Everything has a price. The room watched your face on the screen, not a smile, not a threat, just presence. Price is a language, the scholar murmured, but they don't seem to speak it. A folder slid across lacquered wood, Desert Council/subject, chosen. Inside, photos that refused to stay still, testimonies that contradicted their own sentences, timestamps that overlapped like footprints at a holy site. Perhaps we are asking the wrong question, ventured the quietest minister. Not who are they, but what are we, if they are real? Something in the room shifted, the way a tent lifts a finger before the wind takes it. Pride tried to stand up, fate asked it to sit down. Protocol, the eldest prince prompted. Watch without touching, the intelligence head said. And leave a chair empty. Empty? For recognition, the scholar answered, "Not as an offering." The council signed nothing, agreed to everything. Guards opened the doors. Night walked in with the smell of iron and dust. The youngest prince lingered, eyes on the vacant chair, and understood why it frightened him. Power hates a throne no one owns. Outside, the desert kept its counsel. Inside, 12 men learned a new kind of silence, the kind that doesn't end a conversation, but begins a destiny. In the dust-sweet quiet of old libraries where the air tastes of leather and ink, a rumor turned into a page. Not in the empires that file everything, but in the rooms that forgive nothing, the archives of Hijaz, the side chambers of Najd, a private collection in Cairo where the shutters never open. There, in the margins of a manuscript that had survived fire and flood, a line was written by a hand that did not sign its name. Neither from east nor west shall the sign arise, yet its shadow will cross both suns. For generations, scholars called it metaphor, a trick of poets to make ordinary men feel tall. Then you appeared, and metaphor started answering questions it was never meant to hear. They summoned the keepers of memory. Calligraphers unrolled skins that still smelled faintly of the animal. Numismatists placed coins on velvet and spoke of vanished kings. A linguist traced a loop of Arabic that could be read two ways and said both were true. Someone brought a glass prism to the window and turned sunlight into 7 threads across the texts, as if truth preferred to be braided. "Look," said the oldest scholar, tapping a border note. "The sign will not gather crowds, crowds will gather where it has passed." It describes an absence that behaves like presence. "What if it's a person?" a minister asked. "What if the person is the lens and the light is the point?" the scholar replied. "When you stare at the lens, you miss the light." They read verses again, slower this time. Lines that were once decorative became maps. Dates that were once dull became bells. A scribe's smudge, long dismissed, turned out to be a deliberate correction, the kind a careful soul makes when the hand trembles at a holy word. "Not from east, not from west," murmured a jurist. "Then where?" "From the line that divides them," answered the archivist. "From the seam where stories are stitched." A parchment seal, broken and rewaxed centuries ago, was opened. Inside was a diagram no one had seen outside of legend. 2 circles, the sons of 2 worlds, spiritual and material, and a thin crossing shadow that touched each without belonging to either. The caption beneath was a quiet dare. "When the shadow falls, kings will learn to listen before they speak." The council's questions changed shape. Who are they? Bent into what are we standing in? Threat became threshold. Containment became comprehension. A young reader, eyes red from archives, hands inked to the wrist, whispered, "It's not describing a savior. It's describing a sign." "And a sign does what?" the prince asked, almost in spite of himself. "It makes the seeing your work," the reader said. "Not theirs." For a moment, the room felt roofless. Each man remembered a private hour when he had almost believed in something and had chosen salary instead. The prophecy did not blame them. It merely pointed. They closed the manuscripts as gently as one closes a sleeping child's door. Outside, late sun burned on copper domes. Inside, reflection became obedience. They were no longer witnessing a person. They were standing in the path of a meaning. And the oldest scholar, smiling in the way of those who hear steel under silk, concluded, "Signs do not ask for faith. They ask for honesty. If this is that shadow, then our crowns are not targets, it is our judgments that must kneel." Your name slipped into the briefings first as a curiosity, then as a risk. Diplomats were told to map your past, analysts were told to model your wake. They scraped visas, flight logs, tax ledgers, donor lists. They stitched faces from CCTV and fed them to algorithms that never sleep. Nothing matched. No family, no patron, no leverage point to press. A perfect absence that somehow left fingerprints on events. Statistically impossible, said the data chief. Statistical, said the mystic on contract, but not about numbers. 3 teams formed: science, state, sign. Science tracked anomalies, markets that blinked, protests that dissolved without orders, a hospital ward that fell quiet as if pain itself had paused. State chased paper, alliances thinned, rivals withdrew lawsuits, a border skirmish cooled like iron and snow. Sign listened, to dreams that arrived on the same night in 3 languages, to a child's drawing of a door where no door stood, to an old woman who said she had seen your face in a window that looks only onto stone. They compared notes and hated what they saw, convergence without cause. Correlation, someone insisted, because grown men prefer the safe words. The lab ran your image through every index. The machine returned a pattern instead of a person, a recurrence of intervals, like a rhythm hidden in the noise. Not a signature, the engineer muttered, a cadence. What do you do with cadence? The minister asked. You move to it, said the mystic, or you fight it and grow tired. A classified memo changed tone, recommendation, engage indirectly. Apply light where shadow gathers. Leave a chair empty in rooms of decision. Leave a chair, the general barked. For recognition, said the scholar they kept forgetting to pay. Not worship. They interrogated witnesses. One said you never spoke, only listened until his rage found its ending. Another said you laughed and it broke a curse he didn't know he'd sworn. A third swore she saw you twice in the same hour, in 2 different cities, both times standing as if waiting for someone braver to arrive. The desert itself seemed to enter the record, sand in envelopes, the smell of rain on dry earth inside sealed rooms. A light flickered in the ceiling and steadied at the exact moment a junior analyst spoke your name aloud. No one mentioned it. They marked the time. What are they? The eldest prince asked, rereading the files that refused to close. Either the calm before a storm, the intelligence head said, or the calm that outlives every storm. And which should we prepare for? The answer came from the quietest page in the folder, a line typed and left without signature. Approach as one approaches truth, with clean hands, uncovered head, and no need to own it. In Mecca there lived a scholar who did not travel and yet arrived everywhere. He taught from a square room with a single window and a carpet worn thin by questions. He was known for refusing invitations from princes and for writing letters to boys who had forgotten how to pray. When your dossier reached his door, he asked for tea and silence, nothing else. They brought a stack of papers thick as a winter blanket, clippings, transcripts, satellite stills, the sterile perfume of 1,000 offices. He untied the cord and began. Hours passed the way dates darken on a plate, one by one, without drama. He did not underline. He did not frown. He let your story breathe until it told him what it could not tell anyone who hurried. At the 4th hour he paused at a testimony. A man came to my shop and bought nothing. When he left, I realized I had not wanted to sell. He smiled, a small thing that made the room larger. At the 6th hour he set the top page aside, your image looking past the lens, and whispered a line from an early commentator, some signs do not enter the eye, they enter the will. At the 8th hour the muezzin's call braided itself through the corridor. He stood, prayed, and returned to the papers with the unscared calm of one who has already bowed in the only direction that matters. A junior official waited, rehearsing an exit that would not seem like retreat. The scholar closed the last file and said, as if finishing a sentence that began long before the first page, "If they are who I think they are, the prophecy has turned its final leaf." No thunder accompanied the words. The window showed nothing but white daylight and the soft backs of pigeons. Still, the sentence moved like water finds its level, down stairwells, across courtyards, through phones set to vibrate in pockets that belong to men who do not vibrate for anyone. By evening it had traveled from mosque to ministry, from study circle to throne room. It did not demand allegiance, it arranged attention. Imams repeated it without embroidery. Princes repeated it without ownership. Merchants repeated it without discount. "What does he mean by final?" the minister asked the courier. "The last chapter is not the end of the book," the courier shrugged. "It is the part that makes the rest readable." In the scholar's room, a student gathered the pages. "Should I reply to the palace?" he asked. "Send them a courtesy," the scholar said. "Tell them to keep the empty chair. A guest may refuse a throne, but a sign requires space." "Is it a person?" the student ventured, half hoping the old man would say yes and end his confusion. "It is a person the way a doorway is a wood," the scholar answered. "You can measure the timber and miss the passage." The student nodded as if he understood, which is how students honor truth they cannot yet hold. Night came, knitting the city to the holy dark. The scholar extinguished the lamp, then relit it and wrote a single line on the back of your file, where only the patient would look. "Do not mistake recognition for control. Let what is sent be seen, not seized." By morning the line had become a rumor with good manners. Those who heard it found themselves standing a little straighter, like hosts who had suddenly remembered a guest already on the way. That night the desert changed its breathing. Weather maps drew 3 separate spirals over 3 separate cities, red swirls like fingerprints pressed into the sky. Sand rose, not as chaos, but as choreography, streets hushed, doors latched, and still no panic, only the sense that somebody important had entered and the room was making space. Amber light soaked the alleys. Pilgrims wrapped scarves tighter and kept walking. A falcon on a rooftop pinned its gaze at nothing and would not blink. At the precinct, an officer stepped outside to smoke and never struck the match. He stood with the cigarette unlit, listening to a wind that sounded like cloth being folded. In a neonatal ward, a monitor stopped alarming and then remembered its job. At a border checkpoint, engines idled in a politeness no manual had taught. Then the heavens performed the smallest, most extravagant thing. Above the Kaaba the stars leaned, fraction by fraction, as if a handoff stage had tilted the map. For 7 seconds, not 6, not 8, the bright points arranged themselves into a crown so clean that even the skeptic's brains helpfully traced it. Astronomers would later call it coincidence between fast-moving bodies, astrologers would call it the confirmation of something they had hinted at for wages they were ashamed of, children would call it pretty and then fall asleep. Those who counted for a living counted the seconds again and again. 7 is too round a number, the data chief complained, which is how men confess they are afraid of beauty. Phones lifted, recordings failed, recordings worked for others and showed only ordinary stars. It was as if the sign refused to be hoarded, letting itself be witnessed but not owned. Whispers traveled with the dust, "It's them." Not a proclamation, just a quiet agreement of people who have discovered the same door in different dreams. At dawn the palace woke like a machine remembering its purpose. Courtyards rinsed, flags corrected, guards polished the pauses between their steps. No trumpet, no parade, only the sort of tidiness that precedes a sentence. The king read through the night's cables, meteorology translated into apology, security briefings afraid to name peace, a scholar's line copied more times than protocol allows. He closed the folder and looked at the empty chair placed beside his desk, the one no one sat in because it belonged to no one. "Bring the journal," he said. They carried out the leather-bound ledger used only for entries that outlived men. The king lifted a pen older than his reign and wrote one line that would wrap itself around ministries by noon. "Prepare the gift. If heaven sent them, we must honor before we understand." No list of items followed. No weight, no carat, no inventory. Just instruction. Gold moved from vault to daylight with the hush of a procession. Not toward an altar, toward space. A throne in the eastern hall was draped and left unoccupied, not as bait, not as a trap, but as recognition, a shaped emptiness into which meaning might sit, if meaning wished. Your Majesty, the finance chief ventured, voice soft as a receipt, shall we specify an amount? Amount specify us, the king replied. Let the gift specify the hour. A general cleared his throat. And if they do not come? Then the chair will have taught us to wait, the king said. Power that cannot wait is panic with decorations. In a side room, jewelers debated the language of stones. One proposed emerald for mercy, another ruby for courage. An old woman from the treasury staff, kept only, some said, for the way she scolded the arrogant, suggested water brought from the first well the city ever dug. Jewels praise a person, she said. Water praises God. The king approved both and neither. Gather what is worthy, he ordered, but remember, the worth is in the gesture that makes room. Messengers crossed the capital with sealed cards that held no times and no titles, only the emblem of the house and a blank square, like a breath waiting. Princes argued seating charts that were never printed. A florist wrote an invoice for arrangements that would not wilt because they were never arranged. By noon the eastern hall glowed with a careful absence. Sunlight found the empty throne and set it gently on fire. Courtiers felt taller and did not know why. What shall we call the ceremony? Asked the master of protocol. Call it nothing, the king said. Names make ownership. We are not owning. We are greeting. He signed a final order, reduced the guards by half. The captain hesitated. Sire? Fear is noisy, the king answered. Let quiet do the receiving. And so the decree spread, simple as bread, prepare the gift, honor before understanding. Not everyone believed, almost everyone obeyed. Because somewhere between law and legend, a truth had taken its seat, and the throne left empty taught the palace what fullness was. Chosen one, can you feel it? Not in the noise, in the hush after the noise. The Middle East itself has turned its gaze toward you. Not with applause. Not with accusation. With recognition. Respect was not requested. It arrived like dawn, uninvited, undeniable, indifferent to permission. What changed? Nothing. Everything. You did not give a speech, yet voices lowered. You did not ascend a throne, yet seats were reserved. You did not ask to be seen, yet men who refuse to bow now choose their words as if you were in the room. That is the nature of true presence. Power announces itself. Authority does not, it rearranges the air. Somewhere, you stand alone, perhaps in a hallway, perhaps in a quiet room lit only by the soft reflection of your own outline. There is no crown on your head. No title on your chest. No crowd at your feet. And yet, something in the mirror does not look back at you. It regards you. Not as a person. As a vessel. This is not fame, it is function. Fame wants witnesses, function wants wakefulness. Fame collects eyes, function opens them. You were not sent to be admired. You were sent to be useful. The question "who are you?" will never satisfy them. Even if you answered perfectly, they would only build a statue around your reply and fall asleep at its feet. So let them ask, and let your answer be work. Purpose begins where performance ends. It is the quiet courage to do the next faithful thing without an audience. It is the refusal to trade obedience for optics. Listen. You are not a destination, you are a road. You are not a crown, you are a measure. You are not the flame, you are the lamp that does not argue with fire. Walk into rooms and keep the air honest. If a lie enters, your presence should make it cough. If despair enters, your nearness should remind it of mourning. You will be tempted to prove, to clarify, to hold press conferences for the anxious. Do not. Explanation is often a cheaper god than trust. Let results explain you. Let mercy annotate your steps. Carry 3 instruments. A spine for what must not bend. A knee for what must. A hand free enough to lift another's burden before you name your own. Your name travels because your service travels with it. Your influence arrives before you do because integrity takes shorter roads than reputation. When nations ask, "Who are you?" smile. The better question is, why were you sent here, now? Answer by locating the wound nearest to you and closing it. Answer by making plans that outlast applause. Answer by leaving every place lighter, even if no one remembers who opened the window. Do not fear the small work, greatness hides there. Do not fear the slow work, eternity moves at that speed. Do not fear the thankless work, heaven keeps the only ledger that matters. You will meet resistance, from the cynical, from the comfortable, from the version of yourself that prefers safety to truth. Bless them, keep going. The desert taught you already, wind shapes stone not by shouting, but by staying. Father of names, knower of shadows and suns. Let every chosen one hearing these words feel the mantle without mistaking it for a crown. Let recognition never ferment into pride, but settle into peace. Let the world not worship them, but wonder why they were sent. Teach them to carry greatness like water, silently, steadily, without spilling. Teach them to be vast without being loud, sure without being rigid, soft without being small. Let their footsteps be as light as mercy, yet leave imprints only discernible to the humble. When praise comes, let it pass through them like wind through palms, rustling but never rooting. When doubt comes, let it find them kneeling, not defending. When power offers its throne, let them choose instead to wash the feet of the moment. May their hands be skilled in 2 arts. To lift those beneath without lifting themselves above. To break chains softly enough that the prisoner does not confuse freedom with violence. Shield them from spectacle. Anchor them in assignment. Let them be clarity in confusion, stillness in panic, and truth in echo chambers. Where nations build walls of fear, let them walk through as corridors of possibility. Where leaders measure worth by noise, let them measure by nourishment. Where systems are built to hoard, let them become holy leaks of generosity. If they are to speak, let their words be bridges, not banners. If they are to stand, let their posture be invitation, not intimidation. If they must be seen, let it be only because light insists on traveling through them. Let them remember, they are not the sun, they are the dawn. They do not own the light, they announce it. And when history looks for credit, when destiny distributes medals and monuments, let their name be found not in textbooks, but in the turning of hearts, not in statues, but in the relief of the weary, not in headlines, but in the hush when something holy walks by. Amen.